All right, we are hosting here a little memorial for Rabbi Meir Kahane, Rabbi Meir David ben Yecheskel Shraga HaKohen, Hashem Yinachim Damav, Hashem should avenge his blood. This is the anniversary of the 30th yarzeit since 1990, and I've been poring over his writings ever since he died, and I'd like to give a little presentation for a few minutes at least. Tomorrow night we're going to try and do something a little more elaborate, but tonight we're going to just give a little introduction to remind everybody, for those who don't know, the next generation, and for ourselves that do know and did know him, what he stood for, what he and his son Benjamin stood for and died for. So this is from this book, okay? The author is anonymous. He's in Eretz Yisrael, and he's a friend of the movement, and he put together a beautiful Parsha book. And in his editor's preface, he said the following. He said that the Kahane solution to Israel's security problems was simple. Throw the Arabs out. Why keep a population within your borders that dreams of your destruction? Why indulge an implacable enemy? Indeed, to do so is criminal. And as Rabbi Meir Kahane once said, and I quote here, those who oppose this normal, sane, logical response guarantee the wholesale slaughter of both Jews and Arabs, and the transformation of the state of Israel into a daily and nightly hell, a Rwanda in the Middle East, a repetition of all the places in the world, South Africa and Northern Ireland, where people had neither the courage nor the wisdom to understand that the most fundamental law of politics and political physics is two nations, each claiming ownership over the same land, can never occupy the same space at the same time and not slaughter each other on a daily basis. However, Rabbi Meir Kahane didn't stop there in what he said we had to do. And his son Benjamin, who led the movement, the Kahane movement, Kach movement after his father's assassination. But they said that this isn't just logic, political savvy. This is eminently Jewish stuff based on halacha, Torah law. Permitting murderous anti-Semites to dwell in Israel is not only suicidal, but halachically forbidden. We're not allowed, God does not allow us to do something this crazy to endanger the lives of our fellow Jews and ourselves. And therefore we have rules that he expects of us to do to alleviate problems such as this, and it was to throw them out. Self-restraint in the face of all their terrorism, called havlaga in Hebrew, in the face of terrorism, is not only militarily inane, but Jewishly immoral. It's murder, Rabbi Meir said. It is murder to allow Jews to be killed and not to take any action back against people murdering your people. Caving into pressure, on the other hand, the opposite strain, from the United States or the UN or Europe, is not only embarrassing from a nationalist perspective that takes away your sovereignty and your ability to rule your own country, but it smacks of a lack of faith in God. Why are you more afraid of what people think and governments and armies think than you are what God thinks? So that's a chilul Hashem. Next, a few items to keep in mind of what his Divrei Torah were all about. Although this book and others that he wrote were religious in nature, of talking about Torah, of giving different either Talmudic discussions or Tanakh, filling in the storyline of the Tanakh with the Midrashim, etc. But he never held that politics was separate from religion. It's all, there's no separation of synagogue and state, he used to say. There is a complete union of all aspects of our life under the Torah. And therefore, it's not a secular issue, it's a religious issue. There are only Jewish issues, and therefore the laws of Shabbos and the laws of Arabs are one and the same thing. They come from the same source. It's not our political philosophy or position, ideology. It is Hashem teaching us through the Torah. If you learn it right, if you learn it properly, you are learning what Hashem wants us to do with Eretz Yisrael. And one of the things that Hashem wanted us to do is live there by ourselves so we could have no bad influences and no prevention of our keeping our Torah and carrying it out into the world unmolested by other people's opinions or their anger and hatred. So Torah doesn't have an opinion. It has the will of God being communicated to us through it. So when you talk about Jewish studies, you have the Tanakh, the Midrash, the Halacha, the Talmud. All of it is our studying to discover the will of Hashem, the will of God. How we should pray properly and deeply, observe the Shabbos, but also how we should live a national life with a government, with an army, with how to deal with Goyim, the nations of the world, and what principles, on what standards can some individual Gentiles live amongst us in Eretz Yisrael, not on a national basis, not as a country within a country. So, and one of the main things he stresses throughout all of his writings is the importance of faith, of showing that we really believe in God by the trust we show, that we're willing to take difficult, dangerous stands in the world if need be, because we believe God really exists and he's really going to help us if we do what his will is and stand up for what he taught us as the ideals and the ideology of Torah Judaism. And therefore, no fear was his mantra. We had to have no fear of taking the stand that we take on any given issue, that the nations of the world or the Jewish government that doesn't abide by the Torah will object to our opinions and to our stand. And therefore, some of those things that we stand up for that the rest of the world does not appreciate are things like Israel belongs to the Jews exclusively, and wars to conquer and defend it should be fought ruthlessly. The Torah believes in collective punishment for peoples who are attacking us. They indiscriminately kill us, so we're allowed to kill them back. We're expected to do it to show them that we're not going to just sit idly by and watch our brother's blood be spilled. The Torah believes in national revenge for countries that have dared to desecrate our God and our people and our Torah. And it believes in zealotry, of going the extra mile to show love of God, to stand up for him in the world. The Jews are a special people. Even though all the nations of the world and every human being is created in the image of God, the Jews are above them, are a special chosen people by the Almighty to build a model society in their own land that will serve as a light unto the nations. By our example, we're not going to force anything down anybody's throat, but what we stand for is projecting by our righteousness what a man is supposed to be on this earth that God created him to be. And we do not look at it that we're stooping to their level, that we're coming down to their level to fight them in the mud, and that's not Torah. That is Torah, because that's the only way we can send a message to them to leave us alone. It's the only way we can actually win this war. That's what Rabbi Meir taught. And they dedicated their lives to it. And Meir Kahane said, before he was banned, it's either Arafat or Kahane. Take your pick, he said in 1988. Take your pick. That's what you want. You got me, or you're going to get Arafat. How did he know about 93? The Oslo disaster and debacle? He knew. He knew. And 1,500 to 3,000 Jews have been maimed for life or killed since this stupid Oslo Accords. In conclusion, Meir Kahane said, you shouldn't have any despondency, even though it's hard, even though they defeated us, even though they killed both of our leaders. We have to stand up and not be depressed and keep doing things, find things to do. His motto was, do something. Don't sit there and moan and groan. Hashem will help you, and we will be victorious, and we will succeed in defeating our enemies, internal and external, Jewish enemies and Gentile enemies. But it's going to take hard work and effort on our part and not giving up. He was against giving up. So, just to conclude, for this night anyway, we have the unenviable role of anyone who stands up that supports Meir Kahane and his vision for Jews. And if we had more time, we'd talk about his great Ahavas Yisrael, his great love for Jews, and prove it with stories. Maybe we'll do that tomorrow night. But the bottom line is, it's a hard field to row, because we have to put up with being called extremists and terrorists and fundamentalists, and be from pillar to post, completely savage in the media, and that's why our movement is so small. It's going to take a courage that nobody has demonstrated in this generation to stand up and defy all of these labels and defy all of these threats against us. We know that Rabbi Meir was right, and we know everything that he said 30 years ago has come true, and all of his warnings, and if we would only have listened to him then, we'd be in a lot better shape now. It is up to each one of us to have the heart to look inside and find a way to rise up and stand up with courage and conviction, and may we see the coming of the Mashiach, which will be the ultimate victory of the Jewish people and the vindication of everything that Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Kahane stood for and gave their lives for. Have a good night.